This week in Idaho, BSU athletes join a lawsuit against transgenders in women's sports. Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador launches a consumer protection investigation into the AAP. Then another wind project is proposed in eastern Idaho. Thanksgiving is also tomorrow, so we can be thankful, and so much more. This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you a quick overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. Starting with that first story here, two Boise State University volleyball players have joined a lawsuit against the Mountain West Conference and San Jose State University over policies allowing transgender athletes into women's sports. We thought that was the end of it with Joe Biden's administration, but no, it's sadly here to stay. The lawsuit filed by athletes from 5 universities, so not just BSU, and a coach alleges violations of the Title 11 and First Amendment rights. Then specifically looking a little bit more into what the core of the controversy is, it centers around a transgender player at the San Jose State's women's volleyball team. 5 schools, including Boise State, good old blue, have forfeited matches against St. Joseph's University, which we've talked about before this season. The plaintiffs claim the Mountain West Conference policy, which requires forfeitures for teams refusing to play against transgender athletes, infringes on their rights. The lawsuit seeks to prevent the transgender athletes from participating in the upcoming Mountain West Volleyball Championship. It also calls for San Joseph State's wins to be vacated and the team to be disqualified from the conference tournament. But putting that all together, this case highlights the ongoing debate surrounding transgender athletes in women's sports, which it will not stop because women are women and men are men, with potential implications for collegiate athletics nationwide, as you can probably guess, depending on how this goes. And keeping with the transgender train, or the whole LGBTQ stuff, Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador has launched a consumer protection investigation into the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now, as you might think, that should be something that should be fine. It's the American Academy. They should be above board. It's over its stance on gender-affirming care for minors, something that shouldn't exist. Labrador, along with 20 other states' attorney generals, which is good to see there's a larger group of them, sent a letter to the AAP demanding cooperation in the investigation, and specifically looking at that letter and demand. The letter challenges the AAP's claims that puberty-blocking drugs are safe and reversible for children, citing well-documented dangers associated with these interventions, which we would probably agree with there. Labrador emphasizes the importance of Idaho's Vulnerable Children Protection Act, passed in 2023, which we've talked about a little bit, and it bans transgender-affirming care for minors here in Idaho. The investigation aims to address concerns about medical industry prioritizing political agendas over children's well-being. And then pulling that all together in a bow, the AAP's policy on gender-affirming care has, come under scrutiny, as you can guess by this lawsuit, with critics arguing that such treatment may be irreversible and damaging to young children's bodies and their future fertility if they ever want to have kids. And then another thing that the left loves so dearly, clean energy projects, and going over to Magic Valley, is abuzz with news of another large-scale wind project in the works. Avery Power recently presented plans for the Taurus wind project to Gooding County. Now, specifically looking at details of the project, it would be a 600 megawatt project that would span about 50,000 acres of BLM managed land across Jerome, Gooding, and Lincoln counties, with up to 150 turbines reaching about 650 feet in height, so not short by any means. It would be the second of 3 major wind projects proposed for the region, one of those that is very opposed, Lava Ridge, wink. While Avery touts potential economic benefits, as any business would that wants this, including $37 million in growth during the construction and $35 million in tax revenue over 30 years, local residents, as you can guess from the track record here in Idaho, have expressed concerns. Mainly the first one being ranchers worrying about the impact on grazing lands, with others fearing cumulative effects on agriculture and the climate, which, interesting, climate is an option in there. State legislature has also voiced apprehension about the project's scale and just how big it really is. But moving forward, as Taurus enters the federal review process, the debate over balancing renewable energy developments with local interests is intensifying in southern Idaho, if it hasn't already with the Lava Wind project. And speaking of a renewable project that did not get off the ground, Valley County's Planning and Zoning Commission has denied what would have been the county's first commercial solar farm, which, if you don't know where Valley County is, that's up there in the McCall kind of Cascade area. They denied it, citing concerns about its compatibility with the area's rural character. Then looking a little bit more closely at that, the proposed 16-acre project, located 5 miles south of Donnelly, faced significant opposition from neighboring property owners, who labeled it as an eyesore, end quote, that would decrease property values. While developers claimed the project would reduce Donnelly's energy costs by 30%, kind of weird that it would reduce when you're investing, commissioners questioned whether Valley County's climate was suitable for solar power because they get so much snow. The application scored a concerning -5 on the county's compatibility evaluation, and lacking crucial details about the setbacks that might come up, panel dimensions of what exactly they would do there, and the lot coverage of how thickly they wanted to cover the area. But moving forward after the denial here, Commissioner Chair Caitlin Caldwell expressed doubts about approving any solar projects in the area, so maybe hint to other companies that are looking into that, highlighting the ongoing debate about whether industrial-scale solar installations belong in Idaho's scenic mountain valleys or in Idaho at all, when it can be better put to use for other energy generation things or just more agriculture that we get a lot more money from. If you like those first 4 stories and enjoyed the Midweek Report, do us a favor and hit the like button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us reach more folks who love Idaho just like you. And speaking of better use of public lands, Idaho has thrown its support behind Utah's Stand for the Land lawsuit, challenging federal ownership of unappropriated lands, so BLM lands, if I remember correctly. Attorney General Rao Labrador, he's involved in a lot of stuff lately, filed a briefing with the Supreme Court, arguing that federal control limits Idaho's sovereignty over 61% of our territory here, which is a lot. It's not as bad as Utah, which I think it's 80 or something percent. But looking at the lawsuit a little bit more in depth, it targets about 18.5 million acres of the Bureau of Land Management land in Utah. As the name implies, Utah is kind of pushing this forward. But a favorable ruling could set a precedent for Idaho to claim its 1.9 million acres of unappropriated land we have here in Idaho. Proponents argue that state control would improve land management and economic opportunities just because it's so much closer and there's less bureaucratic tape in the way. However, as you can guess, critics fear potential privatization and loss of public access as being the main concerns there, plus environmental concerns that the state won't put environmental needs as high as the federal government would. But moving forward, the Idaho Department of Land's mandate to maximize financial returns raises concern about prioritizing profit over recreation and conservation, which are the other ones there. So it'll be very interesting to see how this goes forward, but ultimately I think it would be better for it to be in Idaho's hands. Speaking about better use of land, Perpetua Resources Corporation is offering at least 3.4 million common shares at about $10.17 each to advance its proposed gold and antimony mine in Valley County, Idaho. The offer, which would yield up to $40 million, includes an option for buyers to purchase an additional 516,000 shares within 30 days. The funds will be used for down payments on long lead time materials, detailed engineering plans, and general corporate expenses that kind of come up in doing all that. Stibnite, the gold project located about 40 air miles east of McCall, could receive construction approval as early as next year. But in conclusion, Perpetua aims to provide the U.S. with a domestic source of antimony, which, for those of us like myself that don't know what that is, it is a critical mineral primarily produced in China, Russia, and Takistani. Interesting word, sorry if I pronounced your country's name wrong. The project has received about $75 million in funding from the U.S. Department of Defense, which kind of highlights its strategic importance when they want it that badly. And speaking of another use of Idaho land that's actually going quite well, Idaho topped Western states in its per capita from farming revenue for 2023 with about $5,617 per person. This figure, calculated by dividing the total farm revenue by population, highlights the agricultural significant role that it plays in Idaho's local economy. And looking at that more closely and what that all means a little bit more, the University of Idaho Agricultural Economy economist Brett Wilder notes that this metric demonstrates just how important agriculture is here in Idaho, if you didn't already know or have not traveled around the state. And looking at our neighbors, Montana and Wyoming followed at about 4,498 and 3,633 respectively, while no other western state exceeded about 2,000. And speaking of the state that kind of affects a lot of western stuff right now, California, the nation's top farm revenue state, reached only about 1,526 per capita. You can be happy, Idahoans, we beat California at something. Idaho's 2023 figures slightly decreased from 5,794 in 2022, probably due to a small decline in total farming revenue coupled with population growth. Hopefully that'll bounce back with new farmland being added online. However, with that said, the state's $11.036 billion total farm revenue this year for 2023 still reflects agricultural's robustness in contributing to Idaho's local economy, and that ag is still very healthy here in Idaho. And speaking of something we probably did better in Idaho than California, Idaho experienced a significant surge in voter registration on Election Day, November 5th, with 122,015 new voters registering to vote. Woohoo! Welcome to the game. This marks the second highest number of same-day registrations in the general election since 2000, according to data from the Idaho Secretary of State's office. And looking at a little bit more of what that means, the state has also set a new record for total ballots cast, reaching 917,608. Secretary of State Phil McGrain praised the high turnout, calling it awesome, and commending county clerks and poll workers for their efforts. While 77.8% of voter turnout rate didn't break the 2020 record of about 81.2%, it still is impressive to see. In-person early voting also outpaced absentee voting, with about 218,586 early votes cast compared to 107,370 absentee votes. The majority of Idahoans, 98.1% to be exact, used an Idaho driver's license or ID card to register, while others used passports, federal IDs, or other acceptable forms of identification, one of those not being student IDs that did get removed. But in conclusion, the election results were certified on November 26th, so that would be yesterday, by the Idaho State Board of Canvassers, so those are all up to date now and official. Which, if you didn't know anything about the stories we've talked about, or you think friends and family should see it, don't hesitate to share it. Your shares help us spread the word about our beautiful state. And speaking of something that Idahoans are definitely interested in, it was the most common question I got leading up to the election, that would be judicial selection, especially with different election stuff that we just had. It's really hard to know what's going on with the judges. Many voters, including yourself, might find yourself confronted with ballots featuring judges that they know very little about, often leading questions about their qualifications and roles. I have an answer for you. The Idaho Bench Project, spearheaded by Senator Tammy Nichols and Brian Ullman, aims to address this gap in knowledge by providing a comprehensive resource about judicial candidates and the electoral process. It seeks to enhance transparency within the judiciary, empowering voters to make informed decisions that impact their communities. Nichols emphasized the importance of understanding the judges, stating, quote, "Judges make decisions that impact every aspect of our lives," end quote. The project will include educational materials and public outreach efforts to demystify the judicial selection process here in Idaho. But moving forward, the hope would be by fostering a better understanding of the judiciary, mainly the judge system, the Idaho Bench Project hopes to cultivate a more informed electorate, which is what we should all want for, which is really crucial in maintaining a healthy democracy and really helping you, the citizen, have a civil government that follows the legislation that you desire. And speaking about the court system, Kootenai County is grappling with a severe shortage of public defenders, leaving many defendants without proper legal representation. The crisis stemming from Idaho's recent consolidation of public defense services under the State Public Defender's Office, which you may not have heard about, it flew under the radar there. While it intended to address longstanding issues, the change has led to an exodus of attorneys, particularly up there in northern Idaho. In Kootenai County, the bigger one up there, only 11 public defenders are handling cases meant for 26 attorneys, so little bit of a disparity there. First District Judge Robert Caldwell expressed shock at the situation, describing instances where defendants appeared in court without counsel, which is not good at all to see. You want that. Jay Logston, the lead public defender, contributes to the shortage partly to reduce pay rates for contract attorneys, which dropped from about $150 to $100 per hour. My goodness, they're getting paid a ton, but still, that is a drop. This has resulted in most local private attorneys declining state contracts. But in conclusion, as the shortage continues, court cases are stalling, raising serious concerns about defendants' rights to speedy trials and effective counsel. So hopefully that gets ironed out. It's had some other issues, as we've talked about, that centralization, so hope they get that system ironed. And speaking of another system that Idaho has had a lot of trouble with, Idaho's new LUMA system, intended to modernize the state's operation, has had another issue. It has caused a $14.5 million delay in property tax relief, which you're probably wanting there. Specifically, the system reported changes prevented officials from verifying the full budget surplus by the August 31st deadline. As a result, only $76.4 million of the expected $91 million will be used for tax cuts this year. The remaining $14.5 million will be added to next year's potential surplus. State officials couldn't fully validate the year-end budget numbers until late September, nearly 3 months after the fiscal year ended. This delay occurred despite the August 31st deadline for reporting surplus numbers to the counties for proper tax calculations. The $117 million LUMA system, implemented in July of 2023, has faced numerous issues, which we have talked about before, including duplicating payments, payroll processing problems, and unauthorized access to financial records, just to name a few. But moving forward, these challenges may also prevent timely submission of the state's annual comprehensive financial report audit and single audit reports, so hopefully they get that ironed out there and LUMA finally starts doing the job it was supposed to. There again, it's a government program, so it might have some issues there. And speaking about a place that takes a lot of money, the public school system, West Ada School District, Idaho's largest, is facing a staggering $1.1 billion need for building upgrades and maintenance over the next decade. This revelation comes after a long-range facility assessment presented at last week's school board meeting that brought this up a little bit, but specifically the assessment, required under House Bill 521, evaluates every district's building's key systems. While West Ada will receive $140 million from the state's $1 billion school funding package, which Little was very happy about, it is clear that this falls short of addressing all the needs, according to what they're putting forward there. The district chief operation officer, David Heinhardt, expressed gratitude for state assistance, but there's always a key bit there, acknowledges the challenges that are ahead. The trustees unanimously approved the assessment, pointing at the gap between available funds and actual needs. But moving forward, the situation does underscore the ongoing struggle many Idaho school districts face in maintaining and upgrading their facilities, or so they say. In some ways, you got to be a little bit careful there, to provide safe and modern learning environments for their students, which is ultimately what we want and our Idaho Constitution forces us to need to do. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets resolved there in Ada County. Which, if you want to be around to watch the fireworks and see exactly what ends up happening with that and future reporting on the other stories we've talked about, please make sure to subscribe and follow us so you don't miss any of that future content. And going too quickly from Thanksgiving to Christmas, the St. Alphonsus Festival of Trees is celebrating its 40th year, which, if you're new to the Valley, it is a beloved Treasure Valley holiday tradition that has grown from a small gathering to a major community event. We'll find out about that with the volunteers they've got there. But specifically, this year's festival runs from November 27th to December 1st at the Boise Center, so starting today until the 1st of December, featuring over 80 uniquely decorated Christmas trees. Now, the main highlights for the festival this year will be that the proceeds go to support the St. Alphonsus Cancer Institute, which there's always more funding that needs to be done to figure out cancer there, raising about $1 million last year. It also features a special lobby displayed by Sterling Landscape with a ski lift, introducing a new People's Choice Award as well. Jill Adelaide from the St. Alphonsus Foundation notes the event's special multi-generational appeal, with families returning year after year. More than 1,000 volunteers help bring the festival to life, making it one of Idaho's largest all-volunteer event, as I teased there at the beginning. But moving forward, and if you're interested in going, the festival continues to be a heartwarming celebration of community, creativity, and holiday spirit, drawing 20,000 to 30,000 visitors annually, which, if you want to take part in a Treasure Valley tradition, might be worth going and checking it out just before December 1st. And speaking of another feel-good story, the College of Western Idaho's firefighter program has received a $75,000 grant from the Metallica's All Within My Hands Foundation. This funding will help students with equipment and rentals during their work experience. Specifically with the program, which boasts about a 80% higher rate, offers a 2-year associate's degree, including academic training and fire prevention classes. Students then gain hands-on experience with working about 24 hours a week with local agencies, so that's very good for the agencies and them themselves to get some experience. The grant is crucial as gear rentals can cost students up to $1,500 per semester. If you thought your college was expensive, look at that. But for a little bit of some broader context, the Nampa Fire Protection District, which employs 5 CWI graduates, appreciates the opportunity to vet future firefighters through the program, especially if they want to hire them later on. The initiative not only provides a skilled workforce, but also helps local departments save on recruitment and training costs. In conclusion, several Nampa firefighters credit this program with the successful start of their careers, which is very encouraging to hear with the added funding that is going to it. And taking a quick run up to the Winter Wonderland, which is up there in Valley County or McCall area, a recycled water pond near McCall, Idaho, is leaking treated wastewater in the North Fork of the Payette River, which flows into Lake Cascade. Not good to hear. Specifically, the pond, built in the early 2000s, holds about 268 million gallons of treated water used for irrigation, so it's not wastewater. The damaged liner allows small amounts of phosphate and nitrogen to seep into the river, nitrogen not being too bad, potentially causing nutrient buildup in the Lake Cascade over time. David Watkins, an engineer and project manager, proposed a $2.9 million solution to replace the damaged liner. McCall voters will decide on this project as part of a larger sewer improvement bond on May 2025, so later next year. While this leak involves treated wastewater, not raw sewage, it exceeds the state's allowed limits, which is why it needs to be fixed. But moving forward, if voters reject the bond, the Payette Lake Recreational Water and Sewer District may need to use reserve funds for the necessary repairs so they're within code with the rest of the state. And speaking of water in a good way, and coming to our last story here, Idaho is experiencing an abnormally dry year here in 2024, as we all remember, with northern and central regions facing moderate to severe drought conditions, which you wouldn't have thought with all the rain and snow we got earlier in this year. But for more context and details, David Holcomb from the Idaho Department of Water Resources reported it as the 33rd driest year since 1896. Man, that's a little bit. And the 4th warmest on record. Despite these challenges, water experts are optimistic about potential drought and relief in 2025. 57% chance of La Nina conditions this winter could bring cooler temperatures, and with that, increased precipitation. Troy Lindquist from NOAA predicts snowier months in December and January. Hopefully we have a snowy Crispins, potentially improving or eliminating drought in central and northern Idaho. So for all you farmers up there on the plains, you're probably going to be very happy. But moving forward, most Idaho reservoirs currently maintain near normal water storage levels. I can attest to that from fishing, with promising irrigation prospects for the upper Snake region. While 2024 represented significant drought challenges, the forecasted weather pattern for 2025 offers hope for improved water conditions across the state, which is very important with all the ag that we just talked about earlier. And speaking of ag and harvesting, I'm going to have to go and enjoy the harvest this Thanksgiving, and I hope you do as well and are thankful for all the amazing blessings that the Lord has given us here in Idaho. I also want to thank you so much for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it valuable and enjoyable. If you like the Midweek report, make sure to check out our other content. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting me at local Yocal Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most important and interesting stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.